Scientists have identified what triggered the world's biggest climate catastrophe. This is by Timothy Chapman and colleagues on the conversation on Science Alert. Some 252 million years ago, the world was going through a tumultuous period of rapid global warming. To understand what caused it, scientists have looked at one particular event in which a volcanic eruption in what is now Siberia spewed huge volumes of greenhouse gas into the atmosphere. However, there's evidence the climate was already changing before this. Sea surface temperatures had increased by more than 6 to 8 degrees Celsius in the hundreds of thousands of years leading up to the Siberian outpouring. Temperatures increased again after that, so much so that 85 to 95% of all living species eventually went extinct. So it was a near extinction level event from just that, the Siberian traps. The eruption in Siberia obviously made a mark on the planet, but experts remain puzzled about what caused the initial warming before that. Our research reveals Australia's own ancient volcanoes played a big role. Prior to the event in Siberia, catastrophic eruptions in northern New South Wales spewed volcanic ash across the east coast. These eruptions were so large they initiated the world's biggest ever climate catastrophe, the evidence for which is now hidden deep in Australia's thick piles of sediment. Ancient volcanoes. Our study published today in Nature confirms eastern Australia was shaken by repeated super eruptions between 256 and 252 million years ago. Super eruptions are different to the more passive Siberian event. These catastrophic explosions spewed massive amounts of ash and gases high into the atmosphere. Today, we see evidence of this in light-colored layers of volcanic ash in sedimentary rock. These layers are found across huge areas of New South Wales and Queensland, all the way from Sydney to near Townsville. Our study has identified the source of this ash in the New England region of New South Wales, in Australia, of course, where the eroded remnants of volcanoes are preserved. Though erosion has removed much of the evidence, the now innocuous-looking rocks are our record of terrifying eruptions. The thickness and spread of the ash produced is consistent with some of the largest volcanic eruptions known. How big were the super eruptions? At least 150,000 cubic kilometers of material erupted from northern New South Wales volcanoes over 4 million years. This makes them similar to the supervolcanoes of Yellowstone in the United States and the Taupo supervolcano of New Zealand. To put it into perspective, the 79 AD eruption of Mount Vesuvius, which obliterated the Italian city of Pompeii, produced just 3 to 4 cubic kilometers of rock and ash. And the deadly Mount St. Helens eruption of 1980 was about 1 cubic kilometers, as opposed to 150,000 we're talking about in New South Wales. The Australian eruption would have repeatedly covered the entire east coast in ash, meters thick in some places, and a massive outpouring of greenhouse gases would have triggered global climate change. Environmental devastation. Ancient sedimentary rocks provide us with a timeline of the environmental damage caused by the eruptions. Ironically, the evidence is preserved in coal measures. Today's coal deposits in eastern Australia show ancient forests used to cover much of this land. After the super eruptions, however, these forests were abruptly terminated in a series of bushfires over some 500,000 years, 152.5 million to 253 million years ago. Typically, the plant matter accumulated in swamps and was then buried under sediments. The burial process provided heat and pressure, which enabled the conversion of the plant matter into coal. Without the forests, there was no plant matter to accumulate. The ecosystem collapsed, and most animals, of course, became extinct. The subsequent eruptions in Siberia only exaggerated the devastation started by Australia's supervolcanoes. And this collapse of ecosystems is not limited to Australia either. The catastrophic event affected all of the ancient continents, It had a substantial influence on the evolution of life, which eventually led to the rise of the dinosaurs. Australia's super eruption. The eruptions were a key marker of change in the ancient world. As we look to achieving a more habitable climate in the future, who knew the clues to environmental catastrophe lay buried beneath our feet? This is they want to thank also their colleague Phil Belvin from Geological Survey New South Wales for his contribution, Timothy Chapman, postdoctoral fellow in geology, University of New England, Ian Metcalf, adjunct professor, University of New England, and Luke Milan, University of New England. This was from the conversation here on Creative Commons on Science Alert. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.